It's late in the day. We're racing home. We know there's something wrong with the truck. It's got a terrible knock in the engine. And then, with an almighty bang, she lets go. And in 10 seconds, the entire contents of the sump empty onto the road behind the car. And this is what happened. This tire's not doing anything, mate.
Hey Jafffa Adventures, welcome to the channel and welcome to our trip to the very tip of Cape York. Now before you go running from the hills saying, oh no, not another Cape York video, bear with me, this one's going to be a little bit different than what you've seen before. First of all, I'll provide map details to show you where the stunning campsites are and where all the places to see are, so you'll be able to actually get there yourself. Secondly, I did this trip 25 years ago with my parents in an old Series 2 Land Rover. And every once in a while you'll see a flashback to that trip where you can compare what we're doing today versus what we did 25 years ago. It's very cool. So strap yourselves in and let's kick this adventure off. We've got 3 four-wheel drives in the convoy in this particular trip. We've got the Curlings in their GU Patrol. We've got the Archibalds in their 100 Series Land Cruiser. And we've got the Kings, Jill and I, in our 80 Series Cruiser. This was the last trip in our 80 Series before we sold it and got the 200 Series. Now, due to work commitments, I had to hang back for a couple of days. So that meant the Archibalds and the Curlings headed up a little bit early, and they spent some time around the Cairns area and up in Cape Tribulation, checking out some of the tourist sites there. And then I drove and made a beeline for Cooktown to meet up with the guys. So the first day was 1,018 kilometers to get me to Mackay, and the second day was 764k to get me up to Cooktown. And that's where we met up with the rest of the crew, and the real four-wheel drive trip started. Now contrast that with our trip 25 years prior, and it was an absolute rock show of problems. It took us 6 days to get from Brisbane to Cairns. And here's an example of some of the challenges that we faced.
There's Terry doing some work on the refrigerator. For some reason it didn't work. I don't know why, but I'm sure he could tell you. We'll go over and say hello to Dad. I think he's trying to rig up some sort of security device for the back door, which does not lock. There's a good face if I've ever seen one. I think he's here at the back door trying to lock it. Look how dirty the back of it is already. Terry and Dad repairing the diff on the Rover. They didn't tell us last night that they needed to do this. I don't know if they just found out about it this morning or not, but that seems rather strange. What are you doing there?
Gear oil in the transfer case.
What's the matter?
Looks like there's a leak.
Oh, great. Are you surprised?
No, not at all.
And look at this sight before the camera. This is what I've been looking at for the past couple of days. It's my sick husband. We haven't been able to do really much of anything. Good morning, day 11. See where Terry is? Not too hard to tell. Unfortunately, we had bad news again. We were on our way, went about 2 kilometers to the Shell station, and what happened was Terry put unleaded in our diesel tank. That is a big no-no. He is absolutely spewing at the moment, and he's down under there taking the fuel out now. He's turning it into a big drum that he's borrowed from the station. So. How do you feel right now, Terry?
Get that camera out of my face.
Now just to allow you to get your bearings, Cooktown is just off of screen here. So we left Cooktown and headed north up the Wakooka Road until this turnoff at Wakooka Station itself, and that took us up to the tip of Cape Melville. And our intention, and what we did, was we camped out at Cape Melville for a couple of days. Now I've traveled this route on 2 occasions, and on both of those occasions it's been markedly different. First time I did it, this Wakooka Road was very easy, and this Melville Road was an absolute turd. And on the second occasion, this trip, this Wakooka Road was very, very difficult, and the Melville Road had actually just been graded, so that was a breeze. I guess the bottom line is, you never know what you're going to expect in this area here, so just be prepared for anything. After leaving Cooktown, our first stop was the Stark River. It's an easy river crossing with quite a rocky bottom. There's some good camps on both banks of the river, and I know this from experience from camping there back in 1996 with my folks. And I'll tell you one thing about this camp, the Mozzies were ferocious.
There he goes. Just showing you how slowly that we have to go at some points.
Not long after we left our lunch spot on the Stark River, we bumped into a couple of famous individuals. Pulled up on the side of the road were Jason and Simon from Overland Adventures. They were filming Series 7, Secrets of the Cape, and they had a chopper there and heading out to a sinkhole out in the bush. They were very generous with their time. We had a good chat with them, and we of course stopped for the obligatory photo opportunity. That's our second brush with fame now, the first one being Ron Moon on our Trackless Crossing of the Simpson Desert. Very cool. After our brush with fame, we continued north on the Wakooka track. Now, I mentioned earlier that this particular track was a bit of a bugger, and the reason this track was so difficult was that Tropical Cyclone Nathan had cut a path right across this track only 3 months prior. That meant that there were trees down every 50 or 100 meters all along this track, and our progress was slowed down to first gear low range pretty much the whole way. Here's a great example of the difference a diff lock can make. It's certainly not a terribly difficult obstacle to get past, but as soon as one wheel lifts in the air, it's all over for the open center vehicle. When that happens, the only way to do it is with momentum, and when you start hitting things with momentum, that's when you break stuff. Because our progress was so slow due to the downed trees from the cyclone that cut through, we only managed to get to the Genie River, and that's where we pulled up for camp that day. We spent about 10 hours on the track, and we traveled a grand total of 136 kilometers. The Genie River is a cracking little camp spot. There's quite a few camps all along the river. Just be careful if you're in the riverbed itself. It is soft.
Change that tire at the moment if you wish.
Matt decided to take the opportunity at camp to polish his brake rotors. She went down very quickly in the soft sand. Luckily, there was a pretty hard base in front of us, and it was an easy snatch to get out.
Hello. Hang on. Yep, okay. Just like that.
That left us with the rest of the day to have a couple of cold beers and reminisce about the day's travel. Very cool indeed. The following morning, we continued our push north with the intention of hitting the old Wakooka station around about lunchtime. The exit out of the Genie River was pretty greasy because it had rained during the night.
Here comes Terry through a creek crossing and then a mega boggy run up here.
And if we flash back 25 years, nothing had really changed all that much, surprisingly.
Oh, yuck. Here comes Dad through the same section. Oh, shit. Here they are down there sussing out their tracks that they made. See the mud?
As I said earlier, our intention was to get to Wakooka by lunchtime, but Cyclone Nathan had other plans for us. It was extremely slow going, again because of the fallen trees, and we only made it to Wakooka late in the afternoon. So that's where we ended up camping that night.
It's very grown over.
Mainly damage from the cyclone. So at the moment we're doing 5 kilometres an hour, second gear low range.
Wallaby!
Flashback 25 years, and the track was very well defined, and no trees laying on it, which made the drive very quick indeed. Here's our old Series 2 Landy, which we nicknamed Little Red, taking on a creek bank. Just outside of Wakooka Station, we ran into some feral pigs running along the side of the track. I know they're a pest and all, but it was still kind of neat to see them. And then we camped up at Wakooka Station proper. There's certainly nothing flash about that area. It's basically an intersection and an old abandoned station. If you can push past it, I would recommend it. There's nothing really there to see. The road from Wakooka to Cape Melville, when we went in 2015, had just been graded, so it was a beautiful run. As you approach the coast, you get quite a few water crossings that you have to negotiate, but it was nothing too difficult. It took us about 3 or 4 hours to get from Wakooka to Cape Melville itself. Contrast that with our trip 25 years earlier, and it took us a full day to do the same thing because the road was in such poor condition. But that, of course, makes for an exciting trip, doesn't it? That brings us now to Cape Melville, and this is one of the most stunning campsites in the Cape, hands down. I'd encourage you not to skip ahead here, just sit back and soak this place in, because it is truly amazing. As you evolve, your camping setup becomes more elaborate, more comfortable, and more convenient. But it's wonderful to spend a couple of minutes flashback to where you all started out, because when you do that, you realize, geez, we've got it pretty good.
And here's our little camping setup. We've got Les and Lorraine's little cook stove. We've got a little table and some really nice chairs. Mom's making some coffee. It took the 3 of them probably 15 minutes to get the thing lit. I think Terry blew up a couple of lighters or something, and they had one of those emergency matches and didn't want to open it.
So my daughter, who was camped in the tent that's sitting beside the cruiser, was very apprehensive about crocodiles. And for good reason. As we walked up and down the beach, there were numerous croc slides everywhere. So there's something that you certainly have to be wary about. And of course, if you look at this fool, you shake your head, don't you? That's natural selection at work. We camped at Melville for a few days, and this was the start of some dramas that we had with tires on the 100 Series cruiser. Archie was taking his son Ryan for a burn up the beach, and they hit a piece of coral and staked the sidewall of the tire. Unfortunately, it was too big to plug, so we actually had to get the tire pliers out, pull one side off the rim, put a patch inside of it, and then throw a tube in it. It did get us out of trouble, and you have to be prepared for those types of repairs. A couple of cold beers, and the job was knocked over. That evening, we had a beautiful fire on the beach. By the way, your shout, Aaron. And then the following morning, spent some time collecting shells on the beach, and then doing a spot of fishing.
It is the 9th day for us.
No, isn't it 8?
No, pretty sure it's 9. Tiana. Sharon. Mama. Father.
Hello, boy.
Father just got a haircut.
Yes, and you do?
You do for a haircut?
You
Well,
do.
Father.
You idiots.
Hello.
Hello.
Tiana. Aaron. Andrew. Terry. Terry's caught 1 garfish today.
Yeah,
No, yesterday.
yesterday.
And no luck today.
half of a bar.
And don't trust Terry to tie knots. Dad's having no luck at the moment.
That's not true. I caught a prawn.
Dad did a knot for me, and
A
it
shrimp.
was a shrimp. Ryan, what have you caught, Ryan?
3 fish.
3 fish. There's 1 here. That's a, what is it called, Dad? Golden snapper. Myself,
3 bars.
Ryan and Andrew have also caught Bart. Which is dart cross brim, because it looks, yeah, like that. Using ham's the go. Terry's got a fishy.
Go quality.
And this is not brakes.
No pressure, Ter. No pressure.
Be good to me.
Oh. It looks,
What
looks,
is it?
It's a guppy.
looks like a brim.
Stay down.
Yeah, he looks like a brim, that one.
Where'd you get him?
Out of the water. You dickhead.
Where did you hook him?
Oh my god.
No, because it looked like it was hooked in his stomach. You guys are so mean to me, eh?
Is that one edible?
There's also an excellent opportunity to drive up the beach on Cape Melville and poke inland a little and explore some of the amazing streams and in the foothills of those black rock mountains. Plenty to see and do out here. I know I've said it before, but get out there and explore it. It's amazing. Our last night at Cape Melville, and Mother Nature really turned it on for us. If you think that this is a once-in-a-lifetime sunset, check this out, 25 years prior.
Somebody way off in the distance, well, not way off, has a chainsaw out. We're having a fish feed of barracuda rather than barramundi. And noodles and sauce tonight.
And this is a fork in the road between our 1996 trip and this trip. The Hilux started to develop a serious knock in the engine at Cape Melville, and that's where we decided to turn around and head back down south. Unfortunately for our Land Rover, it suffered one final indignity on the way back south, when a passing motor vehicle threw up a stone and chucked it into the driver's window. Before the last word on what happened to our Hilux, be sure to hit subscribe, because in episode 2, our travelers continue the push north, finding amazing campsites in this beautiful location. So what was the story with the Hilux?
So you've heard about cowboy tunes, no doubt? Well, back in my younger years, I was one of those cowboys, and I'll share with you what exactly happened. So my old Hilux had a mechanical fuel pump, and it was easy to increase the fuel delivery by simply screwing in the fuel screw. The other thing I did was take the spring off the wastegate on the turbocharger, and of course, now you've got more fuel, more air, more power. Hey, happy days, your car goes faster. This is what happens when you have a cowboy tune. So the knock we heard in the motor was actually where a hole had burnt into the side of the piston and actually started detonating, and that piston then was slapping up against the bore every time that would detonate. And that was the knock we heard. And over the course of time, with all this heat building up, it wasn't long before there was a critical failure. And this is what happened. Where the gudgeon pin runs through the piston, basically the top of the piston came off. You can see where the rod's been pounding the underside of the piston, and you can see on the top of the piston it's embedded with little bits and pieces of broken ring. So my warning to all you guys out there that might want to do a cowboy tune, don't do it. You're going to end up blowing a motor. Get it tuned properly, make sure your air-fuel ratios are correct, get an EGT gauge, monitor those EGTs, and you'll be sweet. That now has pride of place on my wall of shame in the shed.